Well, welcome to Two Guys of Therapy. We've been talking before, but right now it's pretty funny because there's now an album that's like a retrospective to the last 10 years, and well, the first thing you think when you see an album like this, oh shit, this band is gonna quit. But it's definitely not that way at all, is it?
No, not at all. I think with us, it's like kind of saying, okay, well, that's the first 10 years done. We'll see where we go from here, really. And it's kind of like, we've had a lot of changes in 10 years. So it's a way of kind of summing up what we've actually done and the kind of music we've been playing in a decade. And we're currently rehearsing for the new album, which comes out next year. And we're going to record that in January. But there's been, a lot of people, fans and all, have emailed us and said he's splitting up, but we're not, definitely not.
'Cause you're going to work with the guy that also produced the Bleach album of Nirvana, isn't it? Yeah, why is that?
All the music I've been listening to recently, an awful lot of it's on SubPop records, bands like the Murder City Devils, Zen Gorilla. And it was kind of, we were talking about who we were going to get to produce the record, and the record company wanted to know. And I looked down a lot of lists of records and realised that a lot of the records I have, Jack Endino's done. So it was one of those things where, sometimes whenever you work with producers that are popular, that are well known, it can be a pain in the ass because you're phoning them up and they're kind of trying to see if they can schedule you in and all. And we phoned him and he rang me 2 days later and said, it's Jack and Dino, would love to do the record with you guys, when we set a time for January. So it was cool. And that's us often a very good start before we've even played a note. There's no kind of politics or record company politics involved, and getting our people to talk to his people, that's all out of the way now. So.
You had a little bit of a bad experience with like record companies, etc. last year or something.
In middle of 1998 it was, A&M Records, who we were signed to in the UK, they just didn't exist, which was kind of odd. I think there was some big corporate buyover and they bit the dust. So it was kind of weird because we kind of had about 2 months of not knowing who we were signed to, and eventually our lawyers looked into it and technically we weren't signed to anyone. So we just went out and a few people were ringing, and a few of the more obvious sort of labels were ringing us up and offering not the sort of deal we would want, freedom where we can make decisions. We don't need millions and millions of pounds to make records. It's just silly. So there was a bit of a weird time where we just thought, well, for the first time in maybe 9 years, we didn't have a record deal. Our drummer Graham had broken his arm and he was out of action for about 4 months. So it was kind of a weird time for the band, and that's when I think, looking back, it was a great thing for the band because we actually sat down and thought, right, are we dedicated to this? And everyone said, yep, course we are. So that's why we didn't give up, and we just thought, well, the only way to go is to go forward and keep making music and doing that. And it all come around brilliantly. We're just saying earlier, it makes you reevaluate what is important about being in a band, and it's music.
In the end, it's almost like a nice 3 or 4 months vacation.
It's the 10 years of the band. We've learned who our friends are, especially whenever the deal went through, and whenever we made Semi-Detached, the last album on A&M, and the sales didn't set the world alight, and a lot of people that have been with us for years, involved in the technical side of things and the crew side of things, jumped ship, all disappeared. At the time when we needed people the most, everyone left us, apart from about people I can count on one hand.
I think the easiest way is just to start with the first album or the first EP and then go along the whole story, because I think every album has a nice story with it, isn't it?
Well, I think the first thing we ever did was we released our own single on our own label, because we were a 3-piece band. We didn't have much money. We'd sent away a lot of copies of demo tapes to record labels, and it's very difficult for a band from Northern Ireland to get signed, because a lot of the labels go, well, when are you guys going to come and play in London? We were going, well, we're playing in Belfast, we're playing in Dublin. A lot of them don't really like to come over. Dublin they go to, but Belfast is a no-no for a lot of record companies. So we put out our own single ourselves, pressed up 1,000 copies and sold it at gigs. And the good thing about that was our favourite music at the time was on Ouija Records or on Touch and Go Records from America. Myself and Michael went to see, it was the Revolting Cocks with Al Jurgensen and Silverfish. And we get into the gig, and we actually went to Scotland, so we got a ferry over to Scotland and went to see the gig. And we met the guy from Ouija Records, gave him a copy of our single, introduced ourselves, and thought that was on a weekend. And on the Monday evening, the phone rang. It was Gary. He says, I'd like you to be on Ouija. So that was like a fairy tale. That was brilliant. So we did Baby Teeth then. That was in 1991, wasn't it? And it was recorded in 2 days on a budget of about £1,000. And I remember it was like kind of, I was still working at the time, and the guys had to go to school, and we could afford a studio for 2 days. And we didn't basically sleep. We went in and just did the 5 tracks constantly, worked them in. We finished 2 days later at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go into work then, and the other guys had to go to college or whatever. But that was really good fun. And then the thing was that Touch and Go in America, Quarter Stick, phoned up and said we'd like to put this album out in America. So within like a year of releasing a single on our own label, we were basically dealing with our two favorite independent record companies, which is really good.
It's pretty fast because isn't it funny to think back now after 10 years to the like first few weeks you really thought like, okay, now I'm gonna start the band and really go into it, although I have to do my job during daytime, etc.
Well, it was good because at the very start, like the only ambitions that we had was first of all to get our own single out and to see it in our favourite music shops, a place in Belfast called Caroline Music, and they used to have Sonic Youth big black records. And we wanted to see the single up in the racks there, and that was it. And then we went over to me and Michael went to this Revolt and Cox gig just to see the band, and of course, like we thought, well, it'd be nice if Al Jurgensen gets a copy of the single. He might think it's cool. I gave one to Gary from Ouija, and we'd already written a letter to Ouija and sent them a demo tape a year before, and they'd said thanks but no thanks, our roster's full, blah blah blah. So I thought, well, I'll give him a copy of the single anyway because he was polite enough to write a letter back, and then he signed us. So that was really brilliant. I mean, but that we never it's even to this day we've never kind of taken any ambition. We just thought about the next record.
I remember the shows during Troublegum, etc. That I went to a show, and then I was the most surprising thing for me was that it was so goddamn loud that I really got blasted off. Was it on purpose during the shows to really get extra across to the people? Or?
Well, I think with the nature of what we do, we've always liked it to be really loud. It's always like, even like we were talking earlier about Pitch Shifter before the interview. Bands like Pitch Shifter, I remember I used to go and see bands like Pitch Shifter and Godflesh, and even Sonic Youth sometimes in the early days. And the sound, it was very, very loud, but it was hypnotic or something. And I think that kind of, that stuck with us. I mean, we just always liked being, we're a rock band for God's sakes. We think of all this, we can, it's not as if it's Elliott Smith, we can actually really turn it up loud, yeah. There's something really cathartic about it. I just love getting lost in the electricity of like wires and wood and skins. Like, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it was the reason why it was so surprising to me. It was like the albums were heavy, but I didn't expect it to be like as loud as like a heavy metal show almost, because I used to go to heavy metal shows, etc. So it was like a contrast between the two things.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing was that with an album like Troublegum, it was very melodic and it was very commercial, and it was getting played on MTV and stuff like that. But I think we'd always played this loud, and we just, I think what happened was when we started to play and tour Troublegum, we thought, well, we're not going to compromise here because it's a pop influenced album. We're not going to, our live set's going to be the same. And that's one thing actually about Therapy that we've noticed, that our albums always have a different sound and different approach, but live it all makes sense. And we're one of these kind of bands that so many people that I talked to after the show maybe didn't like the last album or whatever album we've just done, and then see it live and go, oh, I really got it, it really made sense, and then they maybe go out and get the album the next day or something. But it's one of those things where it makes a lot of sense live. We've always been a live band, really, I suppose, and it's a different environment. It's funny, because you make an album like Troublegum, obviously we're working with a producer for the first time, a proper producer, and you think about things like layers of guitar and how loud the vocals should be, and should the vocal and the guitar, this kind of thing. Whereas when you play live, you don't have any of that. You've got technology to get it across, but you just work on your own dynamic, which you have on stage.
And later on, I mean, we're just flying through the 10 years, the decade of Therapy. But what was also surprising to me, but which isn't actually really surprising, because everybody that knows Therapy for at least over a few years knows that it's not always the same, and it's not a logical step every time from album to album. So, the Diane thing, I mean, that video is like played over hundreds and hundreds of times. It's like the most commercialized success ever for Therapy, wasn't it?
The single alone sold a stupid amount. I mean, it was top 10 in 15 countries, that song. In England, it was like in England it angered a lot of people because it was a cello version of a Husker Du song, so people saw it as like blasphemy. But in Europe, it was like, that was kind of when all of a sudden, we'd start getting recognised in the street in different places in Europe. But it was, I don't know, I think it was a really funny album, Fair in Love, because it was kind of completely written, recorded and made in the studio, whereas most of the albums before, all the albums before, were written in rehearsal rooms and rehearsed. But we'd come off like a year and a half tour. We had 2 weeks off, and the record company wanted us to make an album straight away because, in their words, you know, things are hot for 30 minutes. You should just go and hammer it. We didn't even have any time to think about what we were doing. So the whole album, we were in Real World Studios in Bath, which is Peter Gabriel's place. It's a beautiful place. But, you know, it's really weird, sort of like coming off the tour and then going, right, we have to write an album. This place is costing, what, £2,000 a day or something? But, you know, the record company at that point was just throwing money at us because things were beginning to go for us. And it was like, you know, we should have, any normal human being would have thought, well, give us a couple of months off to come up with the songs. But we were just kind of flying because we were all over the world. We were all single, you know, we were all single men. We were all having the time of our lives. So that was bizarre. So things like the Diane thing, we were bored one night and we really loved History 2. And we did a guitar version of Diane. And Martin, who'd been playing some cello on songs like Bad Mother and things like that, we used to be a musical collective called This Mortal Coil on 4AD Records, which is very kind of quiet and ethereal. And I think what happened was I got chatting to Martin about This Mortal Coil and said, did you do the string arrangements? And he went, I did. And I just said to him, well, could you quickly do like a 4-piece cello arrangement for Diane? And what we'll do is we'll get the producer to take all the guitars and drums out, and you put a cello quartet under the vocal. And he did. And we thought, it sounds like This Mortal Coil a wee bit. That's great. And that was it. And of course the record company came down a week later to listen to what we had. And when they heard that, it was like, we want that to be a single. And we kind of didn't know. We thought, well, I'm not really sure. It's like we were going to put it on a B-side originally. It was going to be the B-side of Stories. And they said, no, we think you should do a single. And by the way, we'll give you £100,000 to make a video. we thought we were saying to them, like, nothing's going to happen here. It's a Husker Du cover with cellos. There's no guitars. No one will buy it. And we went and did this video and all, and then it did. It sold loads around Europe.
That's something you really kept in mind, I think, for the last 10, 11 years. It's like, we're not going to be like what the public or record company want us to be.
I think it's not really maybe as thought out as that. We don't say, right, okay, well, someone wants us to do this, so we'll do the opposite. I think it's mostly what we want to do ourselves, and we're just slightly out of sync with them. But I will say we're one of the worst bands. If someone says, you must do this, we will say, no. We won't do it because we don't like being told what to do. And I think no one ever actually really said you should do this or you should do that. But you can just sort of see, especially in England, the pressure around bands and little pointers being given and you should go this way. And, you know, it was always, you know, people would say, have you heard this band? And we're like, well, yeah, we were listening to them 3 years ago when you weren't interested in them. You know, I think because we've a real appetite for new music and new things, a lot of the stuff I'm hearing now that people are going, oh, have you heard? This is the latest thing. It's like Andy was, you know, buying it 2 years ago and playing it to us, and everyone was going, have you heard this? You know, and I think it's good. You know what I mean? When bands do come up and move on through and create their own scene, and it becomes a big thing. But you know, we're doing our therapy thing, and that's, you know, we listen to these bands, we have our own set of influences and our own way of doing things, and that's just the way it works. You know, I really wouldn't like to think that we would purposely go with any scene that we thought was going to be successful, because we've always been kind of out of sync with the scenes, not purposely, but it's just the way we feel comfortable doing. You know, even when you look now at Infernal Love, it was a record, you know, we recorded it in 1995 with cellos, a DJ links from David Holmes, lots of different textures. There's a lot of rock bands now doing the more gothic thing with cellos, textures, DJs. You know, we did it 5 years ago. It's not to say that, you know, they're copying us. It's just we did it then, and these people are going for that more epic gothic, you know, layered sound now.
Okay, last and final question. I mean, after all this 10 years, I mean, you guys, I read a lot of articles that you guys are really back into music again, like 100% extra almost. What will bring that to us as a listener?
I think we've decided, we've done so many different things, right? It's been 10 years of chopping and changing and different things, and this time we want to make a record which we are going to enjoy playing. So we want to make a punk rock and roll record this time around, and all the stuff we've been writing, stuff which really rocks and stuff which we like. There's not going to be any difficult cellos on this one. There's not going to be any DJ samples or anything like that. It's just going to be a fucking straight down the line punk record, because that's what we're sort of like. We're just really, really fired up at the minute, and that's the best medium to get your expression across. And like real punk rock and roll, not a kind of Green Day Offspring thing, but really kind of rock and roll record, yeah.